Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's workshop, all about approaches and strategies for teaching writing well. I'm Chris Street, a professor at Cal State Fullerton, and I am happy that you were able to join me today. So, we're going to do something in just a minute to get to know each other a little bit better. But first, let me just show you what we're up to today. We're going to be, or I will be, introducing a recommended arc for thinking about how we might structure our teaching in all of our lessons. I'm going to explore with you the close connection between reading and writing. We are going to discover several strategies and practical resources that have applicability across broad content areas. So, regardless of the discipline you're teaching, what I'm going to share with you should be applicable to what it is that you teach. And we're going to talk about some of the issues that you're facing as you consider using writing with your students in your discipline. So, quick whip around in the chat. If you could all take 10 seconds and add something to the chat when you see this question: why is writing such a challenge? And so I'd like you to share one challenge that you think of when you consider writing. First thing that comes to mind, put it in the chat. Yes, time, um, lack of professional preparation, good. Yeah, most teachers haven't actually been formally taught how to use writing well with kids, but we're asked to do it oftentimes. Yeah, student apathy. Students oftentimes are not interested in writing, especially if it's outside of the English class. They think that why are we writing in the disciplines? Okay, good. So we have a few and intimidating. Yeah, it's just intimidating. Okay, so we have some definitely have some challenges. There's nothing unique about those. I was expecting those, but there are certainly some benefits to using writing with kids. So I like this idea that writing returns us to the basic or the classical meaning of the word educate, to draw out. So when we ask kids to write about something, especially something they have just read, we first need to figure out, have they understood that reading? So I want to talk about something next that might help with this. I like this arc that comes from a curriculum that I helped develop called the Expository Reading and Writing Curriculum. Its acronym is ERWC. You probably have heard of it. It's in about 1,000 high schools in California, and it's now out there in 5 different states. So it's been around 20 years. It's a middle and high school English curriculum that is based on this arc. And this arc is helpful. It's a helpful frame to think about how to design our instruction. So every single piece of curriculum for ERWC always starts with a piece of professional text on the far left-hand side of the arc. This is text written by a professional that the students are going to be reading. No matter what kind of text it is, this arc helps remind us that we need to guide students in the reading of that text so that they can really understand it. So we need to prepare them for reading. We need to help them understand the reading. We need to help them and give them permission on how to question the text. And then right at the middle of the top of the arc there, we introduce the writing task that will be at the end of each unit for students. And then they are starting to develop their stance. They're starting to respond or think about their response to that reading that they're asked to write about. And then we're going to help them with the writing and the revising. And ultimately, every student is going to end up with a piece of student generated text. So we move from professional text and helping kids understand that professional text really well so that they're well situated to use that professional text and the work they've done in the reading of it to help inform their own argument using the words of others in that professional text to support their thinking when they generate their own student text. So it's a nice model for helping us remind us that students need help all along this continuum from beginning to read all the way through to finishing up with student text at the end. So we're going to share a couple examples. This one is the first one I want to share with you is a practical example for how to get kids ready for a reading event. So read this passage one time through at your normal reading speed, and then we'll talk about it. Now let's think about it. So, did each individual word make sense? Yeah, I bet they did. Maybe hawked is a word that you might not have seen much before for sold gems, but generally, I think we're going to understand all these words individually, but without revealing to the whole group what you think it's about. I want you to now to talk with a colleague and see if you can figure out what this thing is all about. You understand the words, but do you understand the meaning of the passage? Let's take a minute to chat with someone else about that. Right. So, does anybody feel confident in their interpretation of the passage? Do we know what this is all about? All right. So, and if you are looking perplexed, like most people do, I've done this, used this passage with students from sixth grade through PhD. Majority of folks, regardless of whether they're kids or adults, can't figure out what this is all about. So we need to prepare kids to read. We understand each of those individual words, but we oftentimes can't get a sense of what this is about. What about if I had done this? What about if I, as the teacher, had prepared my students over here? I had prepared my students to read by simply mentioning Christopher Columbus prior to asking them to read this passage. With that prior knowledge in mind, does this now make more sense? With Hawk Gems financing him, the adventure, the expedition, Columbus bravely defied all scornful laughter that tried to prevent his scheme. Your eyes deceive you, he had said. An egg, not a table, correctly typifies this unexplored planet. So, round Earth, not flat Earth. Three sturdy sisters forging along. So, three ships forging through the ocean. Days became weeks. There were fearful rumors about the edge. What? The edge of what? The earth. And then at last, if you're out at sea and you see winged creatures, you see birds, you know you're close to shore. So, Christopher Columbus, that piece of prior knowledge makes all the difference. It's a nice reminder that kids need to be set up for success when we're asking them to read. So it helps remind us how important it is to take the time to prep kids for the reading event. All right. So what about, we'll try another one. Now let's think about a different spot in the arc. We're going to be helping kids respond to a task and we're going to ask them to write. So here's an activity as a sample that might give us a good sense of how this could work with kids. It's a mini module called the rhetorical situation that comes from ERWC, the curriculum I talked about. And it's helping kids understand what the rhetorical situation is. So, arguments are made by speakers or writers, and different rhetorical tools are being used by that author or that speaker. Ethos in that down lower corner, left hand corner of the triangle, is all about establishing your credibility as a writer or a speaker. So that's something that we can introduce to students, the idea of developing an ethos or a credibility with your audience. Up at the top, logos, making arguments logically, presenting facts, citing sources, interviewing credible experts. All of those are examples of evidence to help make a logical argument using logos. And then down below, connecting to your audience, especially through emotional connections, is all about pathos. So these different rhetorical tools are used by a writer, by a speaker to help connect with an audience. Connecting with the audience is crucial. So that's what we want to help kids with. So here's a picture that introduces our activity. This is a hospital and it is a children's hospital. And I want to read something or share something with you to introduce you to this situation that we're going to be exploring. So here's our scenario. This hospital is a children's hospital, and they have a family lounge where folks are waiting, loved ones are waiting, families are waiting while their child is being seen by medical professionals. So um, it could be a serious situation, and everybody who's waiting for their child to hear how their child is doing is in this family waiting room. And we have a philanthropist. Her name is Flavia Bipkins. She is a very, very wealthy art collector, and she loves the hospital and wants to donate a painting of hers to the Children's Hospital to be hung on the wall at the family waiting room at the Children's Hospital. And she has four paintings that she wants us to consider. She's going to provide us with four options, and she wants us to help her identify the one painting that's best situated for this particular situation. So that's our rhetorical situation. So before we examine the art, which we're going to do, let's talk about developing some rules that we can generate. So think about this. What's the purpose of the painting that you're selecting to hang on the waiting room? So think about that audience. Think about that context. What purpose do you think a painting might have that's hanging on the wall in the waiting room of the family lounge at the Children's Hospital? And also think about, if you could imagine the audience. The people who are waiting in that family lounge are likely going to include grandparents, parents, siblings, family members. They will have some things in common. They will also be different. They're going to represent all areas of the community that hospital draws from. So keep that in mind. So think about some rules that we can generate. For example, if the purpose of the painting is to soothe, then we're probably going to avoid images of graveyards, and maybe the color red, for example, might not be the best color to emphasize. So those are some of the rules. Those are two examples of rules to avoid certain colors and to avoid somber um, subject matter in the painting. So I'll pause the recording for a minute, give you a second to think about that, and we'll come back together and see what you came up with. Okay, we're back. So I see some rules like um, the purpose. For example, somebody mentioned to distract. That might be a nice purpose of a painting. Yes. To soothe. Yes. Um, to engage. Yeah. To pull you in maybe and give you something else to think about. And then in terms of who's looking at it, yeah, we mentioned all kinds of things about the audience. So multi-generational audience, different cultures, different languages. Yeah, so there's going to be a lot of variability in the audience members. So what I'd like you to do in your small groups is take a look at the four paintings in light of those rules that we just talked about, some things to avoid, some things to emphasize. We want you in your groups to have an ability to differ in opinion, but do so respectfully and ask one another for reasoning behind your differences. This is exactly what the kids would be doing, for example. So imagine your students doing this activity. This is what they'll be doing. And then when your time goes up or time is up, you're going to have a few minutes for one of you, at least from each group, to talk about your reasons for and against the painting that you chose. So here they are. Here's the first one, glass and checkerboard. Here's the second, a landscape. And I'll give you all four in one slide at the end here so you can see them all. Here's the third, sunset. And here's the fourth, frosty day. So again, our task is to make a recommendation to Miss Bipkins, the philanthropist, or which one of these 4 paintings, all of which she adores, which one of her 4 paintings is best suited for the wall at the family lounge at the Children's Memorial Hospital. Okay, I'll pause, give you a few minutes to think about that, talk about that. Okay, so you've made your choices and we had a chance to share out. Excellent. So that's exactly what we would have the kids doing. And this particular mini module would wrap up with activity 5, where now we are changing our rhetorical situation. And you are going to be writing, and I won't ask you to do this, but just as the thinking exercise, this is what the kids would be doing. They would be using the work they've already completed to write a letter to Miss Bipkins. And the purpose of the letter is to explain to her which of the 4 paintings are most appropriate for her to donate. So there's lots happening here rhetorically. So let's take a look at this. Let's first of all look at the painting. So the painting, the occasion of having a painting on a wall, what qualities, what characteristics are necessary for that painting to serve its purpose. That's our idea of the occasion as it relates to the painting. We have an audience for the painting that we need to think about. So who's going to be viewing the painting and under what circumstances? The purpose, why is it being hung? Well, is it to provide comfort or hope or distraction? The tone, how is it going to be received by the audience? So we have a whole rhetorical situation on the left-hand side of this chart with the painting. And then we have a more traditional rhetorical situation on the right with the letter to Miss Bipkins. It's a justification letter that we're thanking her and helping her make a decision on which one to donate. The author, the philanthropist now, Miss Bipkins, is the only audience member. So we have a very targeted audience now. The purpose, you can see the purpose of our letter here. We want to graciously accept her offer without insulting her when we explain which of the 4 we think is best suited for this particular situation. And the tone of that letter matters too. So we have 2 very different rhetorical situations. One, hanging a painting. If you think about that, you probably haven't thought about hanging a painting as having a rhetorical purpose, but it really does. And then our letter to Miss Bipkins. So this hopefully will give kids an understanding of terms in rhetoric like occasion, audience, purpose, and someone can take rhetorical action. They can write, they can speak, or even hang a painting to change a situation or to help others to do so. And so we would talk with students about how this activity increased their understanding of what rhetorical situation is all about. And the idea, again, of the mini modules, this is just one of the 14, is to use the knowledge gained from this mini module and pair this mini module with a full-length module. So when students, for example, see the rhetorical situation introduced in a full, longer module, they'll already have an understanding of what that means. Here's another example. Now that we're asking kids to write, let's stay in the writing end and let's give them an opportunity to practice something for writing an effective summary. Writing summaries is difficult for a lot of students, and this is my single best activity for how to help kids do it better. What I really like this is that it's 4 steps. 2 steps are individual, 2 steps are in groups. So here's how it works. Students read something. Generally, what's best is a short article, something informational and expository is usually best for this activity. And then they're going to read this, and as they're reading, they're going to identify 5 words that they think are essential to understanding that reading. And they are 5 words from the reading itself. So actual words from the reading, maybe they highlight 5 that they think are the most important words for understanding that reading. They get about 5 minutes after they're done reading to identify those 5 words. Timer goes off. new 5 minutes is given. Now, each person finds another person and they partner up. And then you compare your 5 word list to that of your partner. And the goal in this 5 minutes is for you to synthesize your two lists into one. So, unless the two lists are identical, and they're likely not, you have to discuss and debate and come to agreement on which list, a new list of 5 words based on the two originals. 5 words to do that. Sorry, 5 minutes to do that. Timer goes off. Now we're at step 3. Now, each partner group finds another partner group, and we establish groups of 4. So one partner group shares their 5 word list, the other shares their 5 word list, and now the hard part is the foursome has to come to agreement on which 5 words are most crucial to understanding that reading. Lots of debate, discussion. You can try and persuade your peers that your choices are the best, but your group has to be in agreement about its final list. You got 5 minutes. Timer goes off. Now each group of 4 has developed a final list of 5 words. On your own now, everybody slips back to their own work areas. You use the final list of 5 keywords that your group of 4 agreed on to write a 1-paragraph summary for the reading. Use and underline all 5 words from your final list in your paragraph, and be sure to identify the main idea of the article in your summary. So I like this one because in step 1, it's individual. Step 2 and 3, there's lots of time for talk and collaboration and sharing. And step 4, we're back on our own again. What I also like is that in step 4, nobody's prohibited from using their original list of 5 words that they individually thought were most important in step 1. You can still use those words. You just have to use the 5 words that came out of the group of 4 list. So night and day difference in terms of the quality of written summaries based on this activity, as opposed to just asking kids to write a summary. They need help, and this is a great way to help them with it. So we would, if we had a little more time, I would ask you to read this very, very brief article and we would give it a try, but I don't think we're going to have time to actually try it. But these are the steps, again, that you would go through with your students individually, then in partners, then in groups of 4, and finally back to individual again, where you write your summary. So this activity, if you think about it, we didn't get to do all areas of it, but I am curious to see what you thought of it. The learning, I think a lot of the learning is happening in those discussion sections for steps 2 and 3. How was a shared understanding being negotiated? I think if you think about that discussion time in activities 2 and 3, there's a lot of shared understanding and negotiation happening. Practical questions and other thoughts and questions and concerns. So take any questions that you might have, and then we'll jump into another activity. Okay. So this 5-word summary is the most effective summary activity that I've ever tried. I'd highly recommend it. And so now, finally, one more thing. Academic writing. Students struggle with this. They oftentimes don't really know what we mean by academic writing. So this is a great book if you haven't heard of They Say, I Say. It is a great book that's been around for a long time. Every writing center that I know of in the country actually promotes the writing frames or sentence frames that are located at the end of this book in the appendix. And what it really helps do is gives kids the moves that matter for how to put their ideas into academic writing. It helps demystify academic writing. And there are a series of writing frames at the end of the book, sentence frames, that give kids practice with that. And the reason it's got this weird title is They Say, I Say is set up because before we ask kids to engage in writing about what they've read, they need to understand what they say. So that's the they say part of the argument, helping kids with things like summary, paraphrase, direct quotes, helping them understand what they are saying before they engage in the I say. So they get involved in writing themselves. So they say the reading sets up their arguments for the I say part. Here are some simple sample sentence frames for helping kids paraphrase. Students, when we ask them to paraphrase something, they might not even know what that word means. So, what we offer them are these sentence frames that they can choose from. If they want to choose one, they can. They can adapt them, they can ignore them, but it might give them a way to start with how do you paraphrase something that you've just read if you're not quite sure what that means. These sentence frames are designed to help demystify that. If you Google, they say, I say templates, you're going to find many, many resources. This is just one of them. You'll find all kinds of summaries of the different kinds of sentence frames that are available at the end of the book. So if you're looking for some specific ones, for example, introducing a quotation, if you Google, they say, I say templates introducing quotation frames, you'll find them. They're really, really helpful. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time going through them, but I do want you to have this resource as a highly recommended book. And the book is for us as teachers. You don't necessarily need the book, but Googling, they say, I say sentence frames or templates, you'll find the best part of the book, which is the frames at the end for the appendix. So here's a snapshot of what our kids are supposed to be able to do with writing by the time they graduate from high school. These come from the college and career anchor standards. And just glance at those different 10 aspects of writing that students should have familiarity with by the time they finish high school. We, of course, as teachers, are not going to be individually responsible for helping kids with each and every one of those. But I'm hoping as you look at that list, there might be one or two or three areas that would make sense in your discipline to keep in mind to support students with writing in that area. For example, conducting short as well as more sustained research projects. So a quick, easy, informal research activity that might take 10 minutes. If you're using writing with that, that's an example of how you're helping kids see writing used for short, sustained bursts. A lot of what I shared comes from this curriculum called ERWC. So this is a link to the website for the program. Free curriculum, free training. If you're interested in getting certified to use the curriculum, you need as a high school teacher to sign up for a free workshop, 24-hour workshop. I teach them all over Orange County, and we can get you certified and you can have the curriculum for life. This is a one-page flyer about ERWC in case you're interested in learning a little more. And that's it. So I hope you benefited, at least took away a few things today. And I appreciate everybody who was here. I'm going to pause now, stop the recording, and give you an opportunity to ask some questions.